All right, we have a few more people that are joining us online, but I think we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. Welcome to Social Isolation and Youth Mental Health. We are super excited about you guys are going to learn so much wonderful information. We have wonderful speakers. We have about 8 people here in the room at Baker Commons, Luther College. And about how many online? 20 people online. A little bit about me. My name is Kathy Schwartzhoff. I have been with Helping Services for over 30 years. I have been a mentoring coordinator for 27 and certified prevention specialist for 27 and youth mentoring for 25 years. And some people may go, what on earth is a certified prevention specialist? And that's someone who's proven competencies to be able to talk about substances and do research on them and stay abreast of what's going on in the world of substance abuse prevention. So that is a little bit about me.
And my name is Megan, and I'm a nursing student here at Luther. And then I'm also part of the women's basketball team here. And then I'm from Mankato, Minnesota.
My name is Amelia. I'm also a nursing student and member of Luther Women's Basketball, and I'm from Spring Grove, Minnesota.
And I'm Shayla. I'm also a nursing student. I'm a Norwegian minor, and I'm from Farmington, Minnesota. My name is Brooke, and I am a listening board member as well as a nursing student, and I will be working on a palliative care floor up in Rochester next year.
And then my name is Carly. I am a nursing student here at Luther, and then I'm a part of the Luther Swim and Dive team. And then I'm originally from Rochester, Minnesota.
I'm Christian. I'm a social work major. I'm currently interning at Helping Services for Youth and Families, and I'm also on the rest of the team.
So that's our team that has put together this wonderful presentation. And we are I'm going to just do a sound check too, if everything is being heard online. Can somebody either put that in the chat that you're hearing well, or unmute and let us know that you can hear. We need to say that we are going to cover this topic in 1 hour. And that is a big task. But these students took that on and have broke things down in a way that's going to be very enjoyable, and we'll get a lot of wonderful information. So first off, we're going to look at what social isolation is and its impact. And then we're going to look at signs, symptoms, causes, and health impacts of anxiety and depression. And our third section will share how technology is impacting and changing the game in social isolation. And the self-esteem section will lead us through impacts, factors, and bullying. And then the resource section will help us identify to help and support those who are struggling. So that's where we're headed. We always start with a commercial. And so Christian, our mentoring intern, is going to help us with that.
So like I said, I'm an intern at Helping Services. These are all the counties we serve, and each color dot represents something different that Helping Services does. So they do domestic abuse advocacy, family education, substance misuse, and youth mentoring. I work at youth mentoring. We work with children ages 6 to 17 and we work to connect them with a caring adult who's screened, and they spend a minimum of 4 hours together a month.
Thanks, Christian. And one thing we like to share too, because sometimes people question, like, why on earth are you guys doing these trainings? We do them 8 times a year. The Iowa Department of Public Health is our funder for this part of our work. And they ask us to do trainings to help educate people. We want our mentors to be those good role models and have good information. And we also want parents of mentees to know that, and the broader community as well. And to start diving right into our topic tonight, social isolation can be defined in different ways. And the Center for Disease Control defines it as social isolation is a lack of relationships with others and little to no social support or contact. It is associated with risk, even if people don't feel lonely. Social isolation is an integral component of maintaining optimal mental health while maintaining social connections that foster friendships, relationships, and improve overall health. We are going to watch a very short video, and as many of you know, when you present, you always have, is the video gonna work? We're gonna see, and again, I need people to tell us online if they're able to hear everything. Yes.
Ability for a child or teenager to socially interact with others is a critical part of their learning and development. When their ability to socialize is reduced or diminished, they lose a sense of structure and routine, their support services, and it can impact their brain development. The inability for children or teens to socialize often causes them to develop anxiety or depression. These emotions are often expressed through behaviors rather than words. They can easily have tantrums, become clingy, and be easily distracted, where it's difficult for them to stay on task. Self-soothe, eating, being. Negative behavior patterns will ultimately cause poor health and lead to emotional consequences.
So as you can kind of see, we see that social isolation is a huge issue in our youth community, and there are a variety of risk factors that can actually lead children to become socially isolated. And the CDC has outlined quite a few of those, starting with a household income of less than $50,000 a year. And they're seeing that this puts family units under higher amounts of stress, which increases that risk for social isolation, as well as those who have a pre-existing psychiatric or mental health disorder, or are considered part of a marginalized community, whether that be based on gender, race, sexual orientation, or culture. Those people also find themselves at a higher risk. And one that's really pertinent, especially to our area here, is those who have lesser resource access. So those who may be living in rural areas, like here in Iowa, or if they find that there are families who are experiencing a language barrier in their community where they might speak a language that is the minority language in that area, it can be really difficult to foster those communities, and it's much easier to become isolated, as well as for people who may be under stress, have a chronic disease, or be the victims of familial abuse of any kind, which can all be additive factors to youth and their families becoming isolated.
Okay, some major life changes like these that are listed on the slide can be causes for social isolation. Those who experience any form of bullying tend to self-isolate, as well as youth who experience family changes such as divorce, death, and other tragedies. Children who move to homes or schools, new schools, can often feel removed from their social circles, leading to isolation. And children who are growing into middle school and growing into high school certainly have changes in their friends, their support systems, and even romantic relationships can change. And one thing that is really important for youth is that they learn how to deal with conflicts with their peers. That can also cause social isolation when they're, one day it's a friend and the next day they're not. So some signs and symptoms to look for. With social change, young children can have imaginary friends. They can be clingy to parental figures, like what was shown in the video, and they can have lack of peer interaction. With teens, there's physical isolation, decrease in friends outside of school. Then with the emotional types of signs and symptoms, young children are crying often, have emotional outbursts like that one child in the video seemed like they were crying for a very long time, and where very can be withdrawn. With teenagers, there's increased sadness and negative self-perception. And then the communication changes are with young children, they're interrupting conversations. They do timid talking where they may even, whisper into somebody else's ear what they want to be told, want others to know, and asking the parents to play with them instead of their peers playing with them. With teens, communication changes are an increase in parental communication. which is the opposite that normally happens with teenagers. Most of the time when they're a teen, they want to spread their wings and get to know their friends and have friends groups. And then another communication change can be when they're not mentioning friends that were near and dear to them in the past. And one thing I want to say related to these signs and symptoms is don't get carried away with it from the sense that, like, for example, I had an imaginary friend when I grew up. I was fine. And actually my daughter had one too. But it's just like, you don't take one symptom and go, oh, my child's in trouble, or my person that I know that I care about's in trouble. You have to take the whole, all of what you're seeing. But yeah, these are things to look for.
And kind of knowing some of the signs and symptoms, we're also going to talk a little bit about how social isolation can really have a vast impact on children and their overall health, their physical and mental health. And so we've actually found that children who find themselves socially isolated have a higher incidence of heart disease and stroke, as well as higher incidence of obesity and type 2 diabetes. And they're finding that this is often worsened and kind of compounded with a sedentary lifestyle. So a lot of sitting, if they're gaming a lot in their room, they're hanging out alone in their room, laying in their bed, watching their phone or whatever they might be doing, that they're not out, they're not being active, they're not kind of getting moving with their peers. We see a higher rate of that obesity as well, which kind of leads into a lot of mental health issues as well, such as they can become more prone to addiction and suicidal thoughts or actions and acts of self-harm. And ultimately, all of these things combined can really contribute and ultimately end up with a diagnosis of anxiety and depression in children.
Now we are going to get into anxiety and depression. And one thing to remember is that adolescents are at a heightened risk for onset of mental illness. And a statistic that I find concerning is nearly 1 in 5 suffer from a diagnosable mental disability.
All right, so with anxiety, it can be seen as a feeling of fear, dread, or uneasiness. It might cause you to sweat, feel restless, tense, or even have a rapid heartbeat. It can be a normal reaction to stress, and it can help you cope. The anxiety may give you a boost of energy to help you to focus, but with people who are with anxiety disorders, the fear is not temporary, and it can become overwhelming in their day-to-day life. Anxiety disorders are conditions in which the anxiety doesn't go away and it can get worse over time. Symptoms can interfere with activities such as job performance, schoolwork, and relationships. Some risk factors we have seen for anxiety are personality traits such as being shy or withdrawn when you are in new situations or meeting new people, and then traumatic events in early childhood or adulthood, as well as family history of anxiety or other mental disorders. And then some physical health conditions such as thyroid or arrhythmias, which is when your heart doesn't beat at a rate or in different ways that we want to see.
All right, we're going to look at some numbers, and this is the point where we need you to either unmute or put things into the chat. First off, I'm going to give you some numbers, and then there's a third number that's missing. So way back in 2012, gas prices rose to $3.39 per gallon. President Obama was in the White House, and the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting all occurred. For those of you who don't know, Sandy Hook was the first shooting in a school. Now, it's fortunately quite common, but people were taken aback, and children and school folks were very concerned. So the level of children's anxiety was 11.6, almost 12%, which was actually up 20% from 2007. During the pandemic, those numbers nearly doubled. Now, this is where you guys get to participate. What percent of youth worldwide do you think struggle today with anxiety symptoms? I'm going to ask the students here to help me with what they see in the chat. You can unmute if you'd like to.
What does 40%?
40%. Anybody else have a guess?
45, 55, 68,
They're going up.
65.
When you're saying children, are you talking teenagers too?
We are talking about youth worldwide. So youth is generally includes children and teenagers. I think you're gonna be surprised with this number, 21%. Suffer worldwide or struggle with anxiety symptoms. So, yeah. Okay, and we're gonna do that number thing again, so that'll be interesting to see what happens. Thanks for playing, so to speak. Okay, now we're gonna look at some signs and symptoms for depression, and there are a variety of things that are both emotional and physical capacity. So emotional signs can be avoiding people or activities, can be feelings of dread, being on edge or feeling detached, being generally irritable, fearing for the worst, and difficulty concentrating for any period of time. Physical symptoms can also include feelings of restlessness, dizziness and lightheadedness, being on pins and needles, shortness of breath, like feeling like their heart is skipping beats, nausea and sweating, urgency, panic attacks, and sleeping problems.
All right, so now we're going to talk about causative triggers related to anxiety. So these triggers are things that can induce your anxiety disorder or have an episode of mild to severe anxiety. Many of these things are out of the individual's control to some degree, but not completely. Some of them, they do have some influence over. So examples of causative triggers for anxiety are caffeine, a messy home environment, self-neglect for sleep or just general hygiene, excessive amounts of stress, social gatherings, conflict, which conflict can come in your relationships, conflict within yourself, conflict in your community, and even like road conflicts that just come and hit closer to home. So now we're going to kind of dive into the depression aspect of it all. So with depression, it's sometimes called major depressive disorder. It's a common or serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. Fortunately, it is also a treatable thing that we can do. Depression causes feelings of excessive sadness and or loss of interest in activities that you have once enjoyed. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems and decrease your ability to function in work or home, very similar to anxiety.
And I have to go back and correct myself because I think when I shared the signs and symptoms that I shared, I said depression. And that wasn't right. Yeah. So, okay. Now we get to do numbers again. How exciting. So I want you to venture to guess. This is information from the Center for Disease Control. What percentage of adolescents age 12 to 17 had a major depressive episode in the last year? And a major depressive episode means a period of 2 weeks where there's depressed mood, loss of interest in daily activities. They have trouble managing symptoms such as eating, energy, concentration, problems with sleep. So what percentage of youth do you think had a major depressive episode?
It is 11%, 10%, or not percent, sorry. 3 to 5.
What about
13.
people here in the room? What do you guys think? They have the printout which has the numbers on it. You're so smart. Okay, 15.1% is the correct number for that. So we're not going to ask you guys. Okay, so folks online, what percentage do you think that adolescents the same age had persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness?
20, 12, 25, 40, 20%, 18.
We're going to give the person who said 40 a gold star because that was really close. And the next one I'm going to give to you because I think it's hard to ask it. 1 in 6 youth have had an experience of a mental health disorder each year of those years from 6 to 17. So 1 in 6. That is a staggering statistic. Another thing I want to share too is that 37,000 Iowans aged 12 to 17 are people diagnosed with depression. So I thought that was a kind of good to hear Iowa statistic, if you will. So signs and symptoms of depression, they are very varied, and in each individual, they may present a little bit differently, but there are common themes, and they are presented on this slide. These changes can seem like a typical aging process where kids are nervous or overactive or just growing. And a lot of signs are a combination of each other and internal thoughts. So it is very important for us as adults who are role models for youth to have conversations with youth and anyone we know that may be struggling, to have conversations about what is going on inside their heads.
So now we're going to go into some causative triggers for depression. Now, unfortunately, we do see that there are a increased number of causative triggers for depression in comparison to anxiety. But causative triggers for depression can be something small, it can be something big. And most commonly, it is something that's compounded on top of one another. So a lot of small things that build into something else. Most of the common triggers are also out of the individual's control, similar to anxiety. So family history, as well as issues within the family or others, have an increased risk of your teenagers having an increased risk of depression with things such as having a parent or a grandparent or other blood relative who has depression, a diagnosed bipolar disorder or alcohol use problems, a family member who has died by suicide, major communication issues and relationship problems, and then as well as having recently experienced stressful events such as a parental divorce, military service, where they're away for a long time, or death of a family or loved one. There's also causative triggers within having been a victim or witnessing violence such as physical or sexual abuse, as well as using alcohol, nicotine, or other drugs. We tend to see that as well. People who have diagnosed depression or are having issues where they're becoming diagnosed with depression. Having other mental health conditions such as bipolar, anxiety, personality disorder, and or anorexia and bulimia, as well as having ongoing pain or chronic illness within their family or themselves, such as cancer, diabetes, or asthma, as well as having issues that negatively impact your self-esteem, such as obesity, fear problems, long-term bullying, or academic problems overall. So we have a few more causative triggers. The list is definitely a little longer. Having certain personality traits such as low self-esteem or being overly dependent on other people, as well as being very self-critical or pessimistic towards yourself. And then there's another causative trigger of being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender in an unsupportive environment. Has nothing to do with who they are as a person, but more of their support system that is around them. And then the last one that I have listed here is having a learning disability such as ADHD or just general like dyslexia, things that make it hard for them to function in multiple settings.
There is a strong association between social isolation and anxiety and depression in children and adolescents. Social isolation leads to higher levels of cortisol development, and cortisol development is cortisol is the stress hormone in your body. And so when your stress goes up, your body goes, let's get all that in there and not do well. So you want to keep your stress down. We all do. And then too, social isolation can also lead to affecting your cognitive development too. So the mental and physical health of children and adolescents needs careful attention by professionals, health professionals. Anxiety and depression rates are increasing, which is having a large effect on individuals' health. Some of the reasons that anxiety is increasing is linked to COVID-19 because now we're living with it. The pandemic where everything was shut down is over, but now we have to figure out how to live in it, and people still get it. So that kind of causes a sense of concern for people. And then 2, decrease socialization, decrease personal relationships, and then increased technology.
So before I talk about screen time, I want kind of everyone to like reflect like how much time they think they spend on like their phone or like watching TV or gaming per day, or how much, if you have children, how much they spend on it. And then we'll come back to that at the end. So screen time refers to activities we do while we're in front of screens. So this is like watching TV, working on your computer, or playing video games. And this is a sedentary activity, so that means that like we're not moving around very much, obviously, while we're sitting down. And then very little energy is being used during this time while we're on our screens. And then a fact that most American children do spend an average of 3 hours a day alone watching just TV. And then when you add up all the other different types of screen time activities, especially now that like kids use iPads a lot more, this can total anywhere from 5 to 7 hours a day. And then kind of thinking back to like how much time like as adults we spend on our screens too. On average, studies suggest that adults spend around 3 to 4 hours a day as well, but that's just on our phones alone. And then when we add in the other screen time activities such as TV, and if you game too, this can easily reach around like 5 to 7 hours per day or more. And then just kind of like reflecting on your own estimates, what like you thought you spent on your screen time or on your phone a day. Were they close to what you expected? Because like our perception of our own screen time can sometimes differ from the actual time we spend engaged with our devices.
Research has shown here that the more hours of screen time are linked with lower levels of well-being. And high users, those who spend a significant amount of time on their screens, tend to exhibit less curiosity, self-control, and less emotional stability. They're also twice as likely to be diagnosed with anxiety or depression compared to those who are non-users. So the associations with well-being are pronounced in adolescents compared to children. And obviously adolescents are more online or using screen time than children. This weekend, I spoke with a gal who does substitute teaching in a school system, and she said when she substitutes at the high school level, everybody gets their Chromebook out and the lessons on there, and away they go. In the elementary level, they're actually teaching lessons still, but at the high school level, it's all about being on the computer. And that may just be the particular school system and curriculum that they've adapted. But I found that a little alarming. There also is a strong link. There we go. There is a strong link between prolonged screen use and the higher rates of depression and anxiety, as I just said, and other mental health issues in adults. For instance, children who spend 7 hours a day on screens are twice as likely to develop depression. And it's not just about your mental health. It affects people's sleep patterns. Chronic sleep loss due to screen time can impact your cognitive abilities, your school or work performance, and your socio-emotional functioning. The rise in smartphone use among teens has been connected to an increase in mental distress, self-harming behaviors, and even thoughts of suicide. So let's look at how teens are affected by cell phones. 54% of teens that were surveyed felt they're on their phones too much. And I think that's interesting that the youth say that. And then 2/3 of the parents are worried about their youth. 4 in 10 feel anxious without their phones because they think that they're going to miss out on something. And 56% link phone absence to loneliness or anxiety. We think about that too when we're not getting a constant text that says, oh, good job, or something that shows us that a picture of a friend or something like that. If we're not getting that all the time, there's that sense of loneliness. So constant notifications and the pressure to stay connected can lead to burnout as well. So it can be like you're looking for it, but oh, I don't want to see anymore. Spending more time online and less time in person can result in feelings of isolation affecting our mental health. And many of us do have an emotional connection with social media. And that leads to that excessive, I gotta check my phone and see what's happening. What am I missing? And it can also have negative impacts, especially on teens. Now, there are benefits to social media. It can broaden opportunities for connectiveness and connections and conversations. It can broaden the numbers of people that and the actual people that youth associate with. It can boost their self-esteem when they see something that is affirming for themselves. It can promote health because lots of social media, there's apps that you can go on that you can do workouts, or you can check your heart rate or how many steps you've done. And you can provide access to a wealth of information. So for teens, social media offers a way to create intimate peer relationships, which is a crucial milestone in developmental milestone. Social platforms provide instant access to peers, and the immediate gratification of likes and comments is rewarding. So some information about COVID-19. The pandemic had a significant impact on screen time for teens. The pandemic accelerated the rise in screen time with a 17% increase in usage among teens and tweens. And I think too, we could say this particular study is talking about teens, but I would definitely say that adults had a market increase as well. In 2019, statistics showed that 1 in 3 high school students in the US reported feeling sad or hopeless, marking a 40% increase from 2009. So in that 10-year stretch, there was a 40% increase. Additionally, nearly half of the teens surveyed mentioned experiencing anxiety, increased anxiety. And we have been talking a little bit about self-esteem, but now we're really going to get into some good stuff.
As Kathy already mentioned, this is the last major contributor that we're going to talk about tonight in terms of youth social isolation, as well as their mental health. And according to Webster Dictionary, self-esteem is the evaluative component of the self, the degree to which one prizes, values, proves, or likes oneself. One's self-esteem is an important factor in developing and maintaining mental health, as well as sustained quality of life. There are 4 major factors that influence a person's self-esteem. The first is their childhood, which, for example, if they have experienced a series of traumatic events, it can decrease their self-esteem. The second is society, which a very common example would be kids getting looked down upon for not having the right kind of clothes that society views as popular in that time. The third factor is social media, which can impact a kid's self-esteem if they are wrapped up in looking at real, unedited pictures of celebrities and models. And the last major factor is people who the child is surrounded by, like friends. Like, for instance, if a group of friends go shopping and one tries on a dress and the rest of the friends make fun of that person for that dress or that clothing item, that will forever stick with that person in that friend group. That and it will just forever be impactful.
Talking about social media, I remember a youth that was at one of our events a while back when iPhones and everybody carrying a phone was really popular, and he actually was carrying a phone that didn't work, and checking it very often. And I knew that, but I didn't tell anybody else. because I wanted him to have that feeling like it's okay to be cool. But, I just found that very remarkable, but that was his way to fit in. And then years later, this young man, we had to make some rules with mentoring to not have your phones all the time because it interfered with the communication that we were having. And we very much had to talk to him about how much time he checked his phone. Because once he got one that worked, he went to town with it. So let's see. Impacts of social or of low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is characterized by negative beliefs about oneself and their social abilities and their appearance, as Brooke said. Low self-esteem can be associated with numerous mental illnesses, including depression, addiction, eating disorders, and anxiety. Low self-esteem has also been associated with higher levels of loneliness, particularly when accompanied by social acceptance. And self-esteem sometimes can be thought to serve as an internal gauge or a sociometer, if you will, that monitors the likelihood that one will be accepted or excluded from other people. With that being said, we know that oftentimes our perception of ourselves is much harsher than what somebody else's perception is of us for what we were doing. So a child that has their internal sociometer telling them negative things is most likely not going to try to join in on a new social group because they don't feel good about themselves. By being shy or having low self-esteem affects those friendships, and which in turn affects loneliness. Peer relationship problems are thought to induce loneliness throughout the lifespan, but the degree to which certain peer experiences contribute to feeling lonely and the value that one places on different kinds of relationships. Now, we said we were going to talk about bullying, and bullying has been around caning and bullying with each other. But cyberbullying is somewhat new to us and something that we as adults who are role models for youth need to be aware of. And the victims of cyberbullying have experienced any kind of bullying with their peers or someone who appears to be a peer online. So data suggests that cyberbullying contributes to low self-esteem, and it's over and above a bullying person type of thing. And just like bullies who are bullying on the school playground or wherever they are in person, they have low self-esteem, so do those who cyberbully. So, and they use it as a very negative coping strategy and is something that helps them feel kind of powerful and kind of good about themselves. But in reality, it's not a good way to do it, and certainly doesn't gain them friends. So some things to look at here in this little TV is the percentage of today's youth ages 13 to 17 who are using social media platforms. And this wasn't done today, as I said, but it's in the recent realm here. You don't see TikTok here because it's YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. When this study was done, it was TikTok wasn't being used. So these platforms are really affecting youth, as particularly their self-esteem. So social network use can weaken existing close family and friend ties and their interactions, which in turn increases the feeling of loneliness and depression. A benefit of social networks allow individuals to interact with a large number of people, as we said before, that they may not otherwise have contact with. However, those interactions are shallow and insufficient and cannot adequately replace everyday face-to-face interactions. And when I did my training, the research for my training on gaming, There was a gentleman who was a strong advocate for people getting help with their gaming addiction. And he said, as a gamer, he wanted to just be in his game and do his thing and game with his friends that were in that world. He didn't really want to have a relationship with his parents, or he didn't want to have relationships with friends. He wanted those. But one thing he realized was that shallowness, you know, in the relationships. And I just really found that market that he said that wasn't part of a research, you know, thing. It was something he shared after he beat his addiction and got help for it. He realized the impact of being in the same room with people, or taking a walk with a friend, or, you know, being with someone that you're having a back, you know, go back and forth conversation versus online. So social media does also open a door for incorrect conclusions. Stereotypes can also be related to physical appearance, so that thinking that all people should look like this. It also can affect the educational level, intelligence, moral integrity, and other characteristic of online friends to be made, thus lowering someone's self-esteem. And improving your self-esteem, first of all, we want to talk a little bit about pro-social behavior, which means demonstrating kindness and caring towards others. That pro-social behavior is positively associated with self-esteem, and as well as improved confidence, classroom behavior, and interaction among adolescent students. Self-esteem is what specialists consider to be a protective factor. With higher self-esteem, one can protect themselves from depression and anxiety and a myriad of other mental health issues, and even some of the physical things that we talked about as well. Improving a child's social skills has been documented to increase their self-esteem, especially working with children to enhance their conflict resolution skills. And an example of a conflict resolution skill could be talking to youth about how to deal with the bully, if it's a cyberbullying situation or one that's at school. And by teaching and strengthening those social skills, children will begin to feel more confident, and as well with a sense of accomplishment. So we're going to zip into how we can get help.
So promoting physical health is a huge part of combating social isolation and loneliness, and also mental health problems in youth. So as we know, physical activity is really important. It helps us to feel stronger and healthier. And from my source down in the right-hand corner of your screen, a recent review of 38 international studies indicates that physical activity alone can improve self-esteem and self-concept in children and adolescents. So we know that self-worth is often based on body image in this age group. So exercise can help both the body and the mind. Getting proper sleep is also very important. Over the long term, a lack of quality sleep can make you more likely to become depressed. And also eating healthy. So good nutrition will help you feel better physically, but could also improve your mood and decrease anxiety and stress.
And as Amelia talked about too, some of the things that help us foster those meaningful connections are finding hobbies or groups of friends who can help us make some of those connections. And don't you just love the picture of this dog? And I know too, with my cancer treatment, there was a therapy dog that came around, I don't know how often, but he always just set his head on my lap and would let me just pet him, and he loved being scratched on his back, and that felt really good. And it was so nice. And I know for a fact that my blood pressure went down, because there were times that they take my blood pressure when I came and when I left. And it was a marked change when it was there. So, and then too, I have to do my commercial about mentoring as well. When youth have that support system in their life, from if it's an aunt, or if it's the neighbor across the fence, or if it's someone in a formal mentoring program, they've got that support network that kind of catches them when there's times where they're struggling. And we as adults, if you're in a program or not, need to be open-minded and be that type of person, if it's for your friend or if it's for you, to be an approachable person is very, very important.
One thing
Yes.
that I have found, having smaller kids that aren't old enough to be in a youth program, we got them in, we had to change churches, but we got them involved in the church. That's gonna be really, really good. Sunday school, some of our kids starting at 2 years old.
Oh, wow. So I don't always know if people online can hear what people say in the room, but Allison shared that for kids that are younger than me in some kind of formal program, joining their church was really helpful for their situation. And they provided that network of people that care for the young children and are there, right?
Yeah, the Sunday school starts at 2 years old rather than 5 years old.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because they just color pictures of Jesus and and prayers.
Yeah. And so,
With trees.
yeah.
But they love it.
Yeah.
They sing songs.
And so some families, that is just the ticket to, especially starting, as you said, with those 2-year-olds. And, you know, you're never too young to instill self-worth and good self-esteem in a young child, because from day one, you've got to be reading and talking to them and telling them that you love them, you know, so
So
much.
yeah, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old saying, is it Friday? Is it Saturday? Is it Sunday?
So her children are very excited to go to their Sunday school. They may not call it that, but okay. So some things to keep in mind too is we do need to remind youth that everybody makes mistakes. And I tell you, at work this week, I made quite a few of them, and I self-admitted it, but I laughed at myself because it was like, what do you do? Remind them too that you're not alone. Treat yourself with the same kindness that you would extend to a friend. Those are powerful words. And it's okay that, and remember, you're doing your best, because there are times that we can't pull out all the stops. We can only pull out the stops that we're capable of at that moment. And I love this idea too, creating a gratitude diary. And sometimes I go to myself, oh, a diary would be so long. You can do it for an experience. You can do it for thinking about someone that's special to you. Write down how you're grateful for them and what they bring to your life, and catch those emotions that are supportive and helpful to you. So that takes away from that, the diary is so long in my mind. Other people love, 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 just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. And so I love the idea of, you can make it short. You can also make a list of things that you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be full sentences. And I have a very good friend who, her gratitude diary has gorgeous drawings on it. I could never, ever do that, but I'm grateful that she can. So having conversations with youth is really important, especially related to media use. And these questions that are on the screen are good ones to just keep in mind. How are they using them? What do they like? Have you seen anything concerning? I had someone tell me recently, I don't know what my kids use and I don't want to know. And I thought, sir, and I think that that's our job. Yeah. So asking questions helps start conversations and affects their health. Validate their feelings. Don't ever minimize or ignore what they're telling you. Don't force them into doing activities like, you played the trombone when you were young, so therefore you want your child to do it. It's not about you. It's about them. And when I say your child, I'm meaning anyone that you're close to, a loved one or someone that they're in your life. And yes, so teaching social skills, as we said earlier, is very important. Give positive affirmations to young children and children of any age. I enjoy them too. Once your child has acquired high self-esteem, it's much easier for them to establish the kinds of friendships that they want and they need. Strategies for teaching social skills encourage positive interactions, encourage them to communicate with others, provide opportunities for socialism. And or socialization. I know there were times when my kids were younger that we were like, we're going to go to a park because it's time to let loose, but it's also a good time to, be talking to some friends and making some new friends. Empathy and understanding others will help create good relationships, demonstrate good behavior yourself, celebrate their strengths and achievements. And I can't say that too often because sometimes people let that go. For conflict, teach them active listening, compromise, and assertiveness.
All right, and then here are some examples of some ways we can use technology positively. As we know, there's a lot of apps out there that can use for mental health or things like that. So the first one we have on here is 7 Cups. This is an on-demand emotional health service and online therapy provider. So it provides active listening to its users. And the active listening services are provided by listeners who have been trained in active listening via anonymous text or voice chats. And then we have Calm, which is a multifaceted meditation, sleep, and relaxation app featuring a wide variety of offerings for many ages. Also, these apps don't have to be just used for youth or children, they can use for all ages. So if anyone on Zoom or in person wants to pull out their phone and download any of these apps on their phone while I'm talking about them, feel free to do that. The next one is Headspace. So this can help if you're experiencing changes in thoughts, feelings, or behaviors, or just not feeling yourself. Through evidence-based meditation and mindfulness tools, mental health coaching, therapy, psychiatry, Headspace can create life-changing habits to support your mental health. Next one we got is Insight Timer. It offers breathwork and mindfulness exercises, bedtime stories, guided visualizations, soothing music tracks, and multi-day courses on wellness-related topics. There's also talks with wellness experts and even podcast episodes. And the last one I have on here is the Daily Bean, which is just a really cute app that allows you to track your mood. And as Kathy was talking about, the gratitude journal or diary, this can just kind of help you keep track of how you're feeling every day. And then you can also write a little blurb about what you were doing or how you're feeling or what you're grateful for.
So some sources that we need to be aware of, or resources we should say, we've got this definition of community and campus, and I purposefully put Your Life Iowa in the middle because it is for anybody and everybody. And it is a website, you can chat, you can text, you can access it 24/7. Very, very wonderful resource with help, good information, and they oftentimes ask you as you're looking for things, are you getting what you need? And I think that's very affirming. So that's Your Life Iowa. On the community side of things, ASAC is a group that operates out of, they have locations in Cedar Rapids, some other places, but in our area, Dubuque and Manchester. Northeast Iowa Behavioral Health has offices in Decorah and Owine and satellite offices in Waupun, Cresco, West Union, and Elkader. And Regional Health Services of Howard County offers counseling for children, teens, and adults, mental health assessment, and medication management as well. And then Luther College has their counseling services. And then there's also, independent of Luther College, Atellus that you can go to and tell us. I guess you should probably say that. That's a chat support system that's in real time. You chat with a professional counselor whenever it works for you. And it is free of charge, and you can get mental health support in that area.
All right, so it's time for the evaluation. If you have your phone, you can scan a QR code on the screen. If you're on Zoom, we'll put the link in the chat box, and then if you're in person, it's in your folder. It's that pink sheet on the left side. There will be 2 other trainings in May. So on the 14th, Sam Howell will be given a training at noon. And then on May 30th, 6 to 7:30, Kathy will be giving her last training as she will be retiring.
So you'll all come to that. So go ahead and get your application or your evaluation completed. We have found that it's much better for folks to do it as we're on line, and then you get it done. So yeah, we got through everything in 1 hour. So that is perfect, on the dot almost. And feel free to get your evaluation done. We didn't have a lot of time for questions, but we will stay on the call, and people in the audience here can ask questions or give comments or concerns. Because oftentimes when we come to a training like this, we do have something on our mind, and hopefully you've got great information, you've got wonderful resources. But we encourage you to hang out if you're able to, and if you have to jump off, go ahead and do that. And I am gonna put up, this is the information about the upcoming trainings, and you will receive more information on that. And also, if we don't have your email, that's the way to get a hold of us, and that we can reach out to you about future trainings and anything else that's we want you to know about. And then we have our information. LaDonna has been the support system for the nursing students. So what questions, and go ahead and unmute and ask questions, or if you're more comfortable putting it in the chat, that's fine, but we understand that people have to jump up. Thanks so much for coming.